Joe Biden, yeah. Joe Biden, yeah. Joe Biden, sniff your body right. Biden's back, alright.
Oh my God, he's back again. Brothers, sisters, everybody sniff. Gonna sniff the flavor, show you now. It's Biden for you, better vote right now.
Am I original? Obama. Am I the only one? No, Michelle. Am I sexual? Biden. Am I everything you need? You better rock your body now. Joe Biden. Yeah. Joe Biden. Yeah. Joe Biden. Rock your body right. Biden's back, alright. Alright.
You having a good time, Joe?
Now throw your hands up in the air. Wave them round like you sniff your hair. If you wanna party, let me hear you yell.
Why?
Cause we got it going on again.
Am I original? Obama. Am I the only one? No, Michelle. Am I sexual? Biden. Am I everything you need? You better rock your body now. Joe Biden. Yeah. Joe Biden. Yeah. Joe Biden. Rock your body right. Biden's back, alright.
Bring the whole family up. Come on.
Alright. Joe Biden. Yeah. Joe Biden. Biden's back, alright.
I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
By the way, he gave me permission to touch him.
Bad news is I'm not going away.
Joe Biden. Biden's back, alright.
Welcome to the world, Joe.
Joe Biden, yeah. Joe Biden, yeah. Joe Biden, sniff your body right. Biden's back, alright.
Oh my God, he's back again. Brothers, sisters, everybody sniff. Gonna sniff the flavor, show you now. It's Biden for you, better vote right now.
Am I original? Obama. Am I the only one? No, Michelle. Am I sexual? Biden. Am I everything you need? You better rock your body now. Joe Biden. Yeah. Joe Biden. Yeah. Joe Biden. Rock your body right. Biden's back, alright. Alright.
You having a good time, Joe?
Now throw your hands up in the air. Wave them round like you sniff your hair. If you wanna party, let me hear you yell.
Why?
Cause we got it going on again.
Am I original? Obama. Am I the only one? No, Michelle.
Bring the whole family up. Come on. Come on.
All right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Happy Monday. Today's the 22nd of July. We're glad and thankful to have you here. If you're a regular guest on the show, you know what to do. Click that like button. And if it's your first time watching the Wake Up America show today and you end up enjoying the content, we hope we'll earn your follow and you'll come back and join us 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We'd be glad to have you come and join us back there regularly. Thank you also to our sponsor, Preserve Gold, for making the Wake Up America show happen. Let's get her done. President Joe Biden dropped out of the 2024 race for the White House on Sunday, ending his disastrous bid for re-election after the debate that he had with Donald Trump, which showed that he was completely unfit to run for president of the United States again, which has people asking, if he's unfit to run, is he unfit to be president of the United States? It's an absolutely unprecedented announcement, and it was delivered less than 4 months before the election and has immediately upended a campaign that both political parties are viewing as the most consequential in decades. The president, who was intent on serving out the remainder of his term in office, had quickly endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, urging her to take on Trump, and is encouraging the Democratic Party to unite behind her. That makes her the party's instant favorite for the nomination in its August convention in Chicago. So about 1 month from now, the Democrats will select who their presidential candidate will be. Now, I know what many of you are saying. Haven't they already voted in many of the states for their presidential candidate? Oh, you're so sweet. I don't think people quite understand that the United States is not a democracy, and that's not how we select presidential candidates. There's the private parties, which have their own selection process, and then, of course, there is the Electoral College, and we're going to talk a little bit today about how all that happens. At 7:30 a.m. Central Time, it's Mondays with Miltimore. Our good old boy, John Miltimore, will join us at 7:30 a.m. to give his reaction to the news that Joe Biden is dropping out and Kamala Harris stepping in. Apparently, Kamala Harris is going to be the anointed one. Doesn't mean that she's going to be the candidate, however, because the candidate is chosen at the convention, and there is no precedent for an American president to step down after winning their party's nomination before the next election. So we are in uncharted territory to a certain extent, but Kamala Harris, I think, was smart in that yesterday when she posted her reaction to the news that Joe Biden will be dropping out, she said specifically that she would earn the nomination, and she will have to earn the nomination. This coming, of course, in spite of the fact that many Democrats, prominent Democrats, have already come out and endorsed her, giving her immediate public support. One voice was notably absent, however, yesterday, Barack Obama. Now, that might have changed in the time that it took me to do the research for this show, or the time that you might actually be listening to the show this afternoon. Barack Obama might have come on board, but we are not entirely certain. Hillary Clinton has voiced her public support for Kamala Harris, which, of course, is a big one. Some Democrats, like Pramila Jayapal, she's the Progressive Caucus chair, says Harris has proven time and time again that she can prosecute the case against Donald Trump, just what we want, a cop as president. And of course, Rep. Nanette Berrigan, who is the host of the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus PAC, say that she is backing them as well as a long list of names of Democrats that you are more than likely not going to know. But Donald Trump took to Truth Social yesterday to react to the news, saying crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was. He only attained the position of president by lies, fake news, and not leaving his basement. That's funny. Very good, Donald. All of those around him, including the doctor and the media, knew that, and he capitalized doctor, knew that he wasn't capable of being president, and he wasn't. And now look what he's done to our country, and he capitalized country. With millions of people coming across our border, and he capitalized border, totally unchecked and unvetted, many from prisons, mental institutions, and record numbers of terrorists. That's how you know it really is him. We will suffer greatly because of his presidency, but we will remedy the damage he has done very quickly. All caps, very boomerific, make America great again. There we go. Thank you, Mr. President. like all the capitalization there. That was Donald Trump's reaction on Truth Social to the news yesterday. Prediction markets are looking very good for Kamala Harris as the favorite, but one name, quite interesting, is second in line for the favorite to take over the nomination for president of the United States for the Democrats. Number one is Kamala Harris with a 79% chance, according to people who are betting on the outcome. And Michelle Obama is actually number two.
No,
yes.
God! No, God, please, no!
Yes, it is. Yes, Big Mike, number two at 9%, with the chance that she becomes the nominee of the convention. And note that one endorsement for Kamala Harris was notably absent yesterday, and that was Barack Obama.
How dare you?
So we will be talking about that quite a bit, but we will be subjected for the next 4 months to something like this.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm going to come.
Oh! It's the do not come candidate versus the I'm going to come candidate. I think I know which one I'm going to be on side of. Is there no better juxtaposition than that MP3 of that candidacy? Speaking of MP3s, it is sad, though, we will be retiring many of our Joe Biden MP3s. So let us have a moment of silence and say goodbye to Joe Biden on the soundboard of Fun on the Wake Up America show and play him one last time.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Goodbye, Joe. Goodbye. Thank you. So Joe Biden now leaving the soundboard to be replaced by...
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
And our new latest MP3 on the soundboard.
Okay, I can first.
Oh, God!
Yes,
No,
get
God,
used to it.
please, no,
At a minimum,
no,
you've got 4 more months of that to go.
I can first.
We're going to be playing a million billion clips for you this morning. This next clip, President Biden's address to the nation last night, was quite disturbing. And I will tell you that I think that he has finally gone over the edge, lost his mind completely. And in his address to the nation last night, he did use some extremely strong language. So I want to warn those who have kids who might be listening to the show this morning that the next clip that I'm about to play for you right now is rated R. President Joe Biden went off on a tear last night against those who had been questioning him and pushing him this whole time in his final address to the nation. I'm not kidding now. If you cannot take curse words, then this next clip that I'm going to play for you and some of the subsequent clips are rated R. President Biden apparently has fully lost it. Take a listen to his goodbye address to the nation right now. Again, one last warning, explicit words here.
My fellow Americans, I want to take a moment to address some of the hateful shit you've been talking about me. Many of you have said I am suffering from brain worms or that I have applesauce for brains. Well, I won't mince words, so here it is. Fuck you. You're all a bunch of faggots. End of quote. Repeat the line. So enjoy President Cackles or President Booty Juice. I really don't give 2 fucks anymore. Biden out.
Whoa,
My fellow
geez, what a way to go. What a way to go. Now, on a serious note, yesterday, Joe Biden's brother had a very cryptic response to Joe Biden dropping out of the race, which made not a lot of sense and has people this morning trending on X.com. The question, where is Joe Biden? Obviously, that was not his response to the nation last night. But since the announcement yesterday that he was dropping out, apparently no one has seen him. Take a listen to this statement written by Joe Biden's brother yesterday, read out by CBS News anchor. This is a real news clip. Listen.
Younger brothers, and here's what he told us. He said, I'm incredibly proud of my brother. Selfishly, I will have him back to enjoy whatever time we have left. He is a genuine hero. Country over self. It sounds corny in our cynical political environment, but he nor I are cynical. The goal remains the same: defeat Trump and continue the work that Joe has done. My hope is that our party rallies around this heroic act. We asked him.
Just pause. He says, So he was in tip-top shape 4 weeks ago, and now his brother is spreading this narrative that did you hear that? Were you paying close attention? Like, let me back that up again. Joe Biden's brother, Frank, is spreading the idea that we want to try to enjoy any time that we have with him. I mean, it sounds like he's almost like he's either dead or he's dying.
Brother, selfishly, I will have him back to enjoy whatever time we have left. He is a genuine hero. Country over self. It sounds corny in our cynical political environment, but he nor I are cynical. The goal remains the same: defeat Trump and continue the work that Joe has done. My hope is that our party rallies around this heroic act. We asked him whether he feels that his brother's overall health and vitality played a major role in this decision, and he says, in my humble opinion, absolutely. So a member of the president's family now confirming that the president's health was indeed a major factor in this decision, and calling his brother a hero for making the decision to pass the torch to Kamala Harris.
So, Nancy, sorry, can you clarify that the family is saying his health was or was not a factor?
He's saying that, in his humble opinion, yes, the president's health and vitality played a considerable role in his decision. It's important to note Frank Biden is not speaking for the family writ large. This was simply a conversation between CBS News and Frank Biden. Unclear how much input he had in this decision, but he says that he believes that his brother's health did play a role, and he says that the goal remains the same: to defeat Donald Trump.
Well, that is notable because to date, the family, the White House, the establishment has rejected the premise that there was anything that was challenging the president's mental acuity or his health, and that all these accusations were baseless, that it was just age and a few, difficult nights like he had on the debate stage. So that is a change in message.
Yeah, you think that's quite a change in message. Sounds like he's near death, to be honest. Good morning. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. I'm glad and thankful to have you here. Please do click that like button and join us regularly, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Get those Rumble rants in like Cecilia H. What's up, Cecilia? Thank you very much. She just donated $5 and said, Weekend at Bernie's, White House edition. Very funny, Cecilia. You have begun the process of unlocking today's bonus content. I worked so hard on the bonus content, a mini documentary for you today. This week's theme, you'll have to find out what it is, but once you see it, you'll see why it was so hard for me to put it together, especially in such a short time. And today's bonus content is not just a 5-minute mini documentary. It is an extended mini documentary. It goes into overtime to talk to you about, well, one of the most momentous parts of American history, especially related to what's happening with the Democratic Party now. So if you'd like to see today's mini documentary, instead of watching commercials when we go to John Miltimore, the smartest thing that you can do right now is to either go ahead and make a $60 donation through a Rumble rant or a YouTube super chat, or just go to forlibertyshop.com. That's the For Liberty Network, For Liberty Networks merchandise shop. Get yourself some awesome Donald Trump merchandise, fight merchandise. We've got all the latest and greatest merch available to you at forlibertyshop.com. And if we raise at least $60 in Rumble rants or YouTube super chats or in purchases at forlibertyshop.com, you'll get to see today's thank you for Courtney Conover for your donation. The whole 2 BS going around is stupid. They had the legal right to do it. That or the 25th Amendment was necessary and the right thing to do. Interesting. So if you'd like to see today's bonus content, your best bet, head to forlibertyshop.com. Buy yourself some delicious Founding Flavors coffee, a couple of boxes, maybe a T-shirt while you're there. Help support the Wake Up America show and the For Liberty Network. And you are not going to want to miss today's bonus content mini documentary. It's fascinating. I worked very hard on it last night, and I know that you all are going to love it. So get those Rumble rants in early and often so that we can hit that $60 mark before the end of the show. Cool? Ready to rock? Here's who Democrats want to be the next president of the United States.
Poor hubby. Poor hubby.
On and on and on and on. Yeah, this is who Biden endorses the next nominee.
I think that, to be very honest with you, I do believe that we should have rightly believed, but we certainly believe that certain issues are just settled. Certain issues are just settled.
Clearly we're not.
No, that's right. And that's why I do believe that we are living, sadly, in real unsettled times.
Okay, I can first.
Strange stuff. If Kamala Harris's team had anything to do with pushing Joe Biden out, which was a rumor last week, I think this was quite interesting to reminisce on.
We did it. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
I'm going to make sure that I'm the president after you. Kamala Harris's awkwardest moments.
Break it down in layman's terms for people who don't understand what's going on and how can this directly affect the people of the United States.
So, Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. We campaign with the plan. Uppercase T, uppercase P. The plan.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today. But I have before, and I'm sure I will again. I said I'm going to go to the border. And when are you going to the border, Vice President? The administration has asked. I'm not finished. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm being clear with you right now.
Yes, okay.
And so if you're interested, I'll continue to be clear. There are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't, there's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. We are doing it.
It's time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Nelson65 says it's time to get Kamala on the soundboard. Well, she's already there, Nelson.
I can first.
You know, you think we just see these sounds and these MP3s that I've got on this soundboard just fall out of a coconut tree?
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
Tulsi Gabbard was in Europe when the news broke, and she took to X to make her statement.
Hey, everybody. I just got here to Rome, where I'm going to be joining a dialogue and forum on peace, security, and prosperity for the Western Hemisphere in Europe. I just saw the news flash like everybody else. President Biden's no longer running for re-election, and he's endorsed Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee for president and commander-in-chief. I'm going to sound the same warning now that I have been for years, going all the way back to 2020 when both Kamala and I were running for president on the Democratic ticket. She is unfit and unqualified to be our president and commander-in-chief and would be incredibly dangerous in that position. The prospect of Kamala Harris making decisions about war and peace and where to send my brothers and sisters in uniform into harm's way is not only terrifying to us, it should be terrifying to every American, knowing that we would all pay the price for her dangerous actions and dangerous decisions. Everything you've heard me say about Hillary Clinton, the queen of warmongers, can also be said of Kamala Harris. There should be no question in your mind that if Kamala is allowed to be our president and commander-in-chief, she'll be the maidservant of this queen of warmongers, the head of this elitist cabal of warmongers that has gotten us into this place. They're the ones who've been calling the shots behind Joe Biden's presidency. They would continue to call the shots if Kamala Harris is president. And where have they led us? To the brink of war with multiple countries in all parts of the world, and closer to the brink of nuclear war and Armageddon now than ever before. The choice for us is very clear. If we cherish peace and freedom, and if we love our country, we must vote against Kamala Harris in this election on November 5th and vote for Donald Trump.
And it was coconut milk mommy Tulsi Gabbard's reaction to Kamala Harris stepping up to take over.
I can first.
Thank you to Tulsi Gabbard. Does everybody remember when Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris debated in the Democratic presidential debates?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris.
I want to bring the conversation back.
I see people in the chat saying, Tulsi's a mixed bag, and yes, I get it, but just compare and contrast Tulsi Gabbard, as former Democrat, she left the Democratic Party, but compare and contrast Tulsi Gabbard, the Democrat, with Kamala Harris, the Democrat. I mean, it's like night and day. They're completely different. It's like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. versus Joe Biden. Speaking of, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made his own address to the nation, and in his address, he also attacked Donald Trump and Donald Trump's vice presidential candidate, making this accusation yesterday.
And his pick as vice president is a salute to the CIA and to the intelligence community and to the military-industrial complex. Their gravy train is going to continue.
Yeah, well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. really seems to be flailing these days, trying to pick up any kind of momentum that he had lost from the early days of his campaign. And it just feels to me like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is just lashing out at anything and anyone. His best opportunity, I think, was lost when Donald Trump called him last week, asking him if he wanted to help him to become, president of the United States and endorse him. I think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. should have jumped on board the Trump train. But before we move on to that, I want to remind you all about our friends over at rumble.com who are helping make the Wake Up America show great again. It's time to say goodbye to Starbucks and all of those other woke brands and say hello to Rumble's 1775 coffee. Have you guys tried it yet? Unlike other brands, their coffee backs free speech and is unapologetic about it. Visit 1775coffee.com. Use the promo code STUDIO40 and get 40% off any coffee subscription. The coffee comes in medium and dark roasts, and it comes in Peaberry, which is sort of a Kona style brand. In other words, this stuff is premium. Click the link in the live chat or in the description. You can also go directly to 1775coffee.com and use the promo code STUDIO40 to get 40% off. That's a big discount today. And we appreciate Rumble Studio for making those live reads possible, helping us to grow the Wake Up America show.
Okay, I can first.
Okay, Kamala, time to calm down. We also want to say thank you very quickly to our friends L-Dubs and Nelson65, as well as Drew Van Runkle, who contributed to the bonus content unlock. Looks like we've raised $33 of the $60 total. We're almost there, guys. And we're going to go get John Miltimore. He's from the Foundation of Economic Education. He's going to talk to us about what are the odds? How does Kamala Harris's approval rating compare to Donald Trump? We haven't unlocked the bonus content yet, so it's commercial time. But don't go away, because we'll be right back to talk more about the actual polling. How does Donald Trump fare against Kamala Harris? Better, worse than Joe Biden? Talk about all of that when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Cantina crew, this is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter, and I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there was
wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive. And if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist! Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins!
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time.
So the importance of community banks is they are, as they are called, they're in the community, led by members of the community. They are people who understand the capacity of the community, the needs of the community, the culture of the community.
face is exciting.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree that there are things and tools that are available to us to slow this thing down. I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
Deep Thoughts by Kamala Harris. Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Do us a favor, click that like button. If it's your first time here, make sure that you click follow before you leave today. We'd love to have you be a regular guest. Yes, we are what can be, unburdened by what has been. That's right, Joe. We retire our Joe Biden MP3s on the soundboard. Say goodbye to gems like these.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me.
Enjoy new sound bites like these. Yes. So, how does Joe Biden how does Kamala Harris fare against Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup? It's Monday, which means it's Mondays with Miltimore. John Miltimore joining us live on the show again. Good morning, John. Nice to have you here.
Hey, good morning, AP. What a weekend, huh?
Yeah, no kidding. It was pretty wild. So tell us your thoughts, your immediate reaction. I mean, everybody told us Joe Biden was fine. Health was not a factor. Seems like it was a factor in him stepping down.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nate Silver, had it right. He said Democrats made a rational decision, right? Like they did. What's frustrating is for months and months and months, whenever, people pointed out the flaws in Joe Biden. When I say flaws, I'm talking about, his physical decline, his cognitive decline. We were accused of spreading misinformation. We were accused of using cheap fakes and doing these things when it was plain for everyone to see. The only thing that really changed, it wasn't like Joe Biden suddenly declined. What changed was, as the election got closer, Democrats realized he was going to really hurt their chances, to win in the fall, and that they were going to be stuck with Donald Trump. So they had to, make a contingency plan here in the 11th hour. They gave Biden a sharp shove. Don't believe this nonsense like Joe Biden did the right thing, that he was doing best for his country or his party. Biden was really not given a choice. He was given a sharp push by Schumer and Pelosi and Barack Obama. If you read a political story that just published, Pelosi said, we can do this the easy way or we can do it the hard way. And she gave him, 2 or 3 weeks, and the hard way was about to come in. And Biden read the room. He saw the writing on the wall, and he decided, he wasn't gonna even try. And he's slinking away. Now we have Kamala Harris, and I think Democrats did marginally improve their chances in the fall, but I think they also, it's amazing, they had two of the possibly weakest candidates in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris you could imagine. So I don't think they improved their chances much.
No, for sure. I do want to say thank you very briefly to the old book guy. Our friend Roger says too much bad news today. And probably the next 4 months. He'd rather hear an update on Steffi and Hazel. That's the important news. Yeah, John was giving me a little bit of advice for the upcoming birth of my first child. We'll definitely talk about that at the end of the segment, but we've got to feed the news monster. And the big question, of course, John, is have you looked at any of the polling? I mean, how popular is Kamala Harris? I mean, is this a step up for the Democrats from Joe Biden, a step down, something in the middle? What's the story?
Like I said, I think they marginally improved their chances. I think if you see, whether you're looking at polling or betting markets, odds are now, Trump at one point was looking at like close to a 70% likelihood of being the next president. That's, tapered off to probably low 60s right now. But Harris polls really bad, both nationally and in battleground states. And here's the thing too. I'm not sure we don't see a surprise at the convention. Like we'll see if this is just a here you go, if it's a coronation, or if there's going to be a battle. I think all indicators now like it's going to be Harris, but there could be surprises. But I think Yeah, they increased the likelihood of winning, but it's still not very good. Trump is still the likely to be the next president. I think there's going to be a lot of negatives the GOP can run on Harris. Like you just some of the banal stuff she says over and over in video clips, on policy. If you look at her track record, as an attorney in California, where she was this no nonsense prosecutor that really didn't care about civil liberties at all. There's a lot of ground to plow there for the GOP. I think her negatives are already pretty high, and they're going to go a little bit higher.
Yeah, I saw a headline yesterday that came from Joe Exotic, the Tiger King, who said that Kamala Harris threw him in jail. But, funny or not, it is the case that she put a lot of people in jail for doing the same things that she had been doing, which was to smoke marijuana. And she is, so she's sort of got a pretty low reputation amongst Democrats for her history as a prosecutor and a cop.
Yeah, and it's not just, the weed stuff. If you look at truancy, like she was just, if parents didn't get their kid into school, like she was super aggressive on that front. Like her record on policy, is really bad. I think she's, really a paper tiger as a candidate. I think if I was Democrats, I would be looking at a Joe Manchin. I would. You saw Aaron Sorkin put Mitt Romney out there, which I was shocked to see Sorkin say that. Like, if they're serious that Trump is a dire threat to democracy, as they've been saying, they need to find a better candidate, in my opinion, than Kamala Harris. Find anyone else. Like there are reasonable candidates that would actually, that they could turn to. Instead of Kamala Harris, whose track record is actually more radical than Joe Biden's.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. Smash that like button. And if you're enjoying the content, it's your first time here, please click the follow button as well. We'd love to have you be a regular guest. I'm speaking with John Miltimore. He's our regular Monday guest about the earth-shattering news that Joe Biden has announced he will not seek re-election for president of the United States, and he endorses Kamala Harris. Should he step down as president of the United States, John? If he's not fit enough to run, is he fit enough to serve out the rest of his term?
No, I think that is a very reasonable argument to make. I've pointed this out to others. Other people say, no, there's a big difference here. He's just, he can't win, but he can certainly serve. He's been serving for, 3+ years. But I get that. I'm sure he has assurances that said they'll back him, right, until like they're going to let him serve out his term. I think that was part of it. I think if you look, that was part of what they're going to say. They were going to threaten the 25th Amendment, like say, Joe, if you don't go quietly, we will force you out for these reasons. If you play ball, we're going to let you serve out your term. You can give a nice speech, and like all this negative, chatter in the media and among your party is going to go away. But clearly he's not at the helm of the presidency. I think we saw that. We saw just how much Joe Biden is struggling. So yeah, I think it's a completely logical argument. If you are incapable of running and seeking election because you're slipping so bad, yeah, you shouldn't be at the head of the head of the country. But I don't think we're going to see that narrative get much legs, because the Democrats are going to kind of control the news cycle. Again, it's going to be all about Harris, and we're not going to see Joe Biden in the headlines much.
Thank you to L Dubs for his Rumble Rant donation. He just unlocked the bonus content today. Appreciate you, L Dubs. He said, if there was an open convention, how would the candidate handle the Palestine issue and also unite the party after spurning Kamala? He thinks that Kamala is the inevitable nominee. I do too, but it's not to say that there couldn't be another candidate that steps up. The Democratic convention is sort of anybody's ball game in the first round. So if somebody wins in the first round, it's over. But in the second round, things start to get a little bit more interesting, because they have super delegates. Rather than have one person have one vote, they have certain favored members of the party who achieve superdelegate status and get 10 votes for their preferred candidate. One announcement that Hillary Clinton would endorse Kamala Harris means that if the voting at the Democratic convention goes to the second round, Hillary Clinton's 10 votes go to Kamala Harris. But one endorsement was notably absent, and that was Barack Obama. Now, Kamala Harris may be the favored candidate to take the nomination, but I'm not sure if you saw who the second most favored candidate was in some of these prediction markets. The second most favored candidate was Michelle Obama. What's your reaction to that, John?
I think she'd be probably a much more difficult candidate to beat. I think Michelle Obama remains a pretty popular figure in America. I do think Harris, you really like, she will be the nominee in my opinion, right? Like, are there potential surprises? Yes. I've argued for a long time you really can't pass on her. Like especially in the party that's all about identity politics, to pass over a female candidate of color, like they would take a lot of heat. They'd look like hypocrites for it. And there is something that I want to point out too about you bring up like super delegates, okay? Let's not forget 16 million people voted for Joe Biden in these primaries, something like that. And like all for years we've been hearing about democracy, we're the party of democracy. All that went out the window. What you had here was a political coup led by Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and Schumer and these other people that said, no, Biden's not going to win. There's nothing democratic about that. And you look at the democratic process of super delegates, you're going to have a very small minority of elite Americans that are going to pick the Democratic nominee. There's nothing democratic about that. I'm tired of being lectured about this. Democrats really aren't interested in democracy. They're interested in power. And that is what drove this. This was nothing about, like serving democracy, fighting for democracy. They're interested in power. And that's why Joe Biden's gone, because he was no longer a candidate that was going to be able to win the election. They're doing this to increase their chances of holding on to the presidency.
That's John Miltimore's take from the Foundation for Economic Education about Kamala Harris's chances, or perhaps Michelle Obama stepping up as a potential candidate and maybe even being stronger. So Donald Trump in all of this stands tall because of the attempted assassination that happened last week. I think while it hasn't like skyrocketed him ahead in the polls, it probably helps him maintain a sizable lead. We're going to talk to BX, the private investigator, about the assassination attempt, and she's going to put to bed some of the conspiracy theories and maybe inflame some others here in about 10 minutes when we speak to her. But do you think ultimately Donald Trump manages to eke it out in this election due to the chaos on the Democratic side, John, and due to the sympathy from people who watched him fist in the air defiant after his attempted assassination?
Yeah, my prediction at this point is Trump, wins, with somewhere around 300 electoral votes or something. I would say the odds are pretty good. It's either an eke out or a bigger level of victory. But he could lose narrowly too. Like, there's a lot that can happen. I think we're going to see more surprises. I gotta watch your next segment. I'm interested to learn more about this. I find it just bizarre that we're more than a week past this, and we have such few concrete material facts from this shooting. Like, that's a problem. And you have conspiracy theories going on both the left and the right. The left is saying it was just a staged attack by Trump, who was not actually struck even by a bullet. On the right, we're hearing things about, oh, was it just really one shooter? Are we, you listen to the shots. I listened to the shots for the first time and heard a guy say, no, there's two guns. And I'm not an audio forensic expert or anything like that, but I'm like, hey, that does sound like two different weapons. And then I saw a CNN, article said, like, they interviewed their own, audio expert, forensic expert, who said, yes, it sounds like two weapons. So I just want more, like why don't we have a report yet? Like why haven't they issued like at least a preliminary report that gives you the basic facts? Like, I'm not interested in what Crooks was searching on social media. Okay. I'm not interested in those things. I want to know the basic, how many rounds were recovered from his weapon, like all these basic things that we don't have yet. And it seems very odd to me that that's the case. Every mass shooting in this country, we have press conferences for days, right? And they go over this to get all this information. If any local police department was running an investigation like this and giving no details, they'd be taking heat for it. Yet the president of if a former president of the United States, there was an assassination attempt, and we've heard virtually nothing from the FBI. The Secret Service gave a little, and then has clammed up. Like, the American people deserve answers, but we're getting nothing. So I'll be tuning into your next segment to listen to somebody who can hopefully offer a knowledgeable perspective on what actually happened.
Yeah, well, the next guest that we have is fantastic. She's an expert in many of these lone shooters and lone gunman incidents. She studies them diligently, and I'm looking forward to having BX on the show here in about 15 minutes. John, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go today?
No, just check out my Substack. I write at the Take by John Miltimore over there. And other than that, it's going to be a wild few months, and look forward to discussing it with you. And hopefully, after, this baby comes for you.
For sure. Hopefully after. I need the news to just slow down for a couple of weeks so I can take some time off. John, thank you very much for your time. As always, we appreciate your generosity. Have a great time, great week, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, you too, AP. Have a good one.
Give me a round of applause. What say you?
I have to just interject. If you would turn off those cameras, because I don't want this. See the screen up there of me? That's very severe, that comb over. That's a severe sucker. What's with that one? It looks okay from the other side. But that is very severe. I apologize. Man, I looked up there. I said, whoa. Look at that. Wow. That's like a work of art. Only look at that one. Don't look. That one looks.
Donald Trump roasting himself for his comb over. Thank you, President Trump. How can you not love Donald Trump 2024? He's way more fun this year. Here's Donald Trump showing up to his rally tonight. You love to see it. Feeling good today. It's the Wake Up America show. You guys have unlocked the bonus content. Thank you for your support and your donations. Enjoy the bonus content. You'll find out the theme here now in just a couple of minutes that will run throughout this week. Thanks to your generous contributions, you have unlocked it. People like L-Dubs, Courtney Conover, Drew Van Runkle, and many others. We'll be right back with BX with her conspiracy theories on the shooting when we get back on the Wake Up America show, the For Liberty Network. Wake Up America show looks at American political conventions that were hotly contested, violent, or historic. Considering the news of the ending of Joe Biden's presidential campaign, let's look at the 1968 Democratic Convention. The 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, Illinois, was marked by violent protests and party upheaval as Hubert Humphrey clinched the presidential nomination. Though the 1968 protests at the Democratic National Convention were largely against the Vietnam War, the country was undergoing unrest on many fronts. The months leading up to the infamous 1968 Democratic Convention were turbulent. The brutal assassination of Martin Luther King, Jr. in April had left the country reeling. And although segregation had officially ended, racism and poverty continued to make life difficult for many blacks. The Vietnam War was in its 13th year, and the recent Tet Offensive had proved the conflict was far from over, as the draft sent more young men into the fray. It was only a matter of time before a showdown would take place between the government of President Lyndon B. Johnson and America's war-weary citizens. By the time delegates arrived for the convention in Chicago, protests had been set in motion by members of the Youth International Party, Yippies, and the National Mobilization Committee to End the War in Vietnam, MOB, whose organizers included Rennie Davis and Tom Hayden. But Chicago's Mayor Richard Daley had no intention of letting his city or the convention be overrun by protesters. The stage was set for an explosive face-off. A divided Democratic Party. The Democratic Party in 1968 was in crisis. President Johnson, despite being elected with a huge majority in 1964, was soon loathed by many of his peers and constituents due to his pro-Vietnam War policies. In November 1967, a relatively unknown and unremarkable Minnesota senator named Eugene McCarthy announced his intent to challenge Johnson for the Democratic presidential nomination. In March 1968, McCarthy won 40% of the vote in the New Hampshire presidential primary, thereby validating his candidacy. A few days later, Senator Robert F. Kennedy abandoned his support for Johnson and entered the presidential fight. President Johnson saw the writing on the wall, and on March 31st, told a stunned nation during a televised address that he would not seek re-election. The following month, Vice President Hubert Humphrey, backed by Johnson, announced his candidacy for the nomination, further dividing the Democratic Party. Humphrey focused on winning delegates in non-primary states, while Kennedy and McCarthy campaigned hard in primary states. Tragically, the race was turned upside down again when Robert Kennedy was assassinated after giving his victory speech following the California primary on June 4th. Kennedy's delegates were divided between McCarthy and dark horse candidate Senator George McGovern, leaving Humphrey with more than enough votes to clinch the Democratic presidential nomination, but also leaving the Democratic Party in turmoil just weeks before their national convention. Pegasus, fed up with Democratic leadership's penchant for war, yippies protesting at the 1968 Democratic National Convention conceived their own solution: nominate a pig for president. Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman came up with the idea, named their candidate Pegasus the Immortal, and pledged, "They nominate a president and he eats the people. We nominate a president and the people eat him." Pegasus the Immortal's presidential campaign may have been the shortest in recorded history. His chance to become leader of the free world ended abruptly when he, Rubin, and other members of his campaign staff were arrested at his first press conference in front of the Chicago Convention Center. Pegasus's eventual fate remains unknown to this day. Protesters take over Lincoln Park. In July 1968, Mob and Yippie activists applied for permits to camp at Lincoln Park and hold rallies at the International Amphitheater, Soldier Field, and Grant Park. Hoping to dilute the protesters' momentum, Mayor Daley approved only one permit to protest at the bandshell at Grant Park. About a week before the convention, despite not having permission, thousands of protesters, many of them from out of state and from middle-class families, set up camp at Lincoln Park, about 10 miles from the amphitheater. Expecting resistance, protest leaders organized self-defense training sessions, including karate and snake dancing. In the meantime, Democratic Party delegates began arriving in a Chicago that was rapidly approaching a state of siege. National Guardsmen and policemen met their planes. Their hotels were under heavy guard, and the convention amphitheater was a virtual fortress. Violence at Lincoln Park. Initially, Mayor Daley let the protesters remain in Lincoln Park. The day before the convention began, however, he ordered Chicago police to enforce the city's 11 p.m. park curfew, hoping that a show of force would clear out the protesters before the convention began. The mood at Lincoln Park was festive at first. There were impromptu yoga sessions, music, dancing, and the general revelry that happens when like-minded people gather together to protest the establishment. But the mood turned tense as opening day of the convention approached and the police presence increased. Around 11 p.m. on Sunday, August 25th, a couple thousand police officers wearing riot gear, helmets, and gas masks lined up at Lincoln Park. Some threw tear gas into the crowd. Protesters scattered every which way and rushed out of the park, blindly falling over each other as the tear gas assaulted their eyes. The protest grew violent when the police attacked them with clubs and often didn't stop when someone was subdued on the ground. Eyewitnesses report it was a scene of unrestrained bloodshed and chaos. Later, the police defended their actions by claiming the protesters shouldn't have broken curfew or resisted arrest. According to Thomas Foran, the Chicago lawyer who would later prosecute protest leaders, many of the protesters were spoiled brats who thought that they knew better than everybody. They were being encouraged to do things they shouldn't do by these sophisticated guys whose idea was to shame the U.S. government. Infighting on the convention floor. On Monday, August 26th, the 1968 Democratic National Convention officially opened at the International Amphitheater. Television cameras captured everything happening on the convention floor, but were unable to live broadcast the demonstrations happening outside. Whether the news blackout was due to the electrical workers' strike, as Mayor Daley claimed, or a deliberate attempt to prevent the public from learning about the citywide protests is unclear. Several states, including Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama, had multiple slates of delegates competing to be seated at the convention. Many took the battle to the convention floor. a racially diverse delegation from Texas was defeated. The convention soon became a battleground between anti-war supporters and Vice President Humphreys, and indirectly, President Johnson's supporters. On Tuesday night, when a promised televised primetime debate on Vietnam was postponed until after midnight when most viewers would be asleep, the anti-war delegates made their fury known to the point that Mayor Daley had the convention adjourned for the night. National Guard. Called up by Tuesday evening, protesters had gathered at the Conrad Hilton Hotel where many of the delegates and candidates, including Humphrey and McCarthy, stayed. As tense police officers tried to maintain control, Mayor Daley sent in the National Guard to help. Protest leader Tom Hayden united the crowd by proclaiming, "Tomorrow is the day that this operation has been pointing for some time. We are going to gather here. We are going to make our way to the amphitheater by any means necessary." On Wednesday, August 28th, the promised televised Vietnam debate finally took place to determine if the Democrats would adopt a plank of peace or one of continued war. At the same time, MOB convened their long-planned and highly anticipated anti-war rally at the Bandshell at Grant Park. Up to 15,000 protesters gathered, much less than protest leaders had hoped for, and they were quickly surrounded by hundreds of police and National Guardsmen under orders to keep the protesters from reaching the amphitheater. Around 3:30 p.m. that afternoon, a teenage boy climbed a flagpole near the Bandshell and lowered the American flag. The police moved in swiftly to arrest him as protesters rallied to his aid, assaulting the officers with rocks and food or whatever else they had on hand. Hoping to quell further violence, Davis reminded police that a legal protest permit had been obtained and requested that all police leave the park. In response, the officers moved in and beat Davis unconscious. The police beat protesters at will with clubs and fists. Despite the hostility, anti-violence protest leader David Dillinger still supported protesting peacefully. But all bets were off for Hayden, who feared mass arrests and worsening violence. He encouraged protesters to make for the streets in small groups and head back to the Hilton Hotel. Peace plank defeated. As things heated up in Grant Park, they also heated up on the convention floor. The peace plank was defeated, a huge blow to the peace delegates and millions of Americans who wanted the Vietnam War to end, and the delegates erupted into chaos. In the words of one delegate, "We were desolate. All of the work that we had done, all of the effort we had made had, it seemed to us, come to naught. Our hearts were broken." By nightfall, a standoff had ensued in front of the Hilton between thousands of angry protesters and thousands of police officers. No one knows who or what triggered the first blow, but soon police began clearing out the crowd, pummeling protesters and innocent bystanders with billy clubs and using so much tear gas that it reportedly reached Humphrey some 25 floors up as he watched the bedlam unfold from his hotel room window. At home in their living rooms, horrified Americans alternated between watching images of police brutally beating young, blood-splattered demonstrators and Humphrey's nomination. During the nomination process, some delegates spoke to the violence. One pro-McGovern delegate went so far as to refer to the police violence as Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago. Late that evening, Humphrey won the presidential nomination with Senator Edmund Muskie of Maine as his running mate, but the win was nothing to celebrate. Any illusion of unity within the Democratic Party was shattered. After Humphrey's nomination, many anti-war delegates joined protesters in solidarity and held a candlelight vigil. The next day, the remaining protesters and hundreds of anti-war delegates attempted to reach the amphitheater again, but were deterred with tear gas. At midnight on August 29th, the bloody and contentious 1968 Democratic Convention officially ended. Chicago 7. Over 650 protesters were arrested during the convention. The total number of injured protesters is unknown, but over 100 were treated at area hospitals. It was reported that 192 police officers were injured and 49 required medical treatment. Davis, Dillinger, Hayden, Black Panther activist Bobby Seale, and 4 other protest organizers, known as the Chicago 8, were charged with conspiracy and crossing state lines to incite a riot and brought to trial. After Seale complained about being denied his right to choose his own lawyer, the judge ordered him to appear before the jury each day bound, gagged, and chained to a chair. Seale was removed from the Chicago 8 case and ordered to stand trial separately, making the defendants into the Chicago 7. Seale was sentenced to 4 years for contempt of court, but the charges were later overturned. After a lengthy, often circus-like trial, the jury found the Chicago 7 not guilty of conspiracy.
5 defendants, however, were found guilty of inciting a riot. All convictions were eventually overturned on appeal. The pandemonium at the 1968 Democratic National Convention did little to stop the Vietnam War or win the 1968 presidential election. By the end of the year, Republican Richard M. Nixon was president-elect of the United States, and 16,592 American soldiers had been killed in Vietnam, the most of any year since the war began. The events of the convention forced the Democratic Party to take a hard look at how they did business and how they could regain the public's trust.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Thanks for joining us live this morning. Please do click like. And if you're enjoying that content, do click the follow button. We'd love to have you be a regular guest. That bonus content today, which went into extended overtime, no longer just a 5-minute mini documentary, the story of the 1968 Democratic Presidential Convention, so dramatic that we had to produce a 12-minute long bonus mini documentary for you today. And I hope that you enjoy and appreciated that. I certainly appreciated you all contributing today to unlock that content. This whole week, we will be doing a bonus mini documentary surrounding the most contested presidential conventions in American history. The 1968 Chicago Democratic Convention certainly bears many analogs to what's happening in the upcoming Chicago Convention next month in August, after Joe Biden announced he will not seek re-election for president of the United States and endorses his VP, Kamala Harris. But let's go back to the Republican side of things and take a look at what's happening on the other side of the aisle. Donald Trump, fit as a fiddle, out there making fun of his own side part comb over at his rally the other day as we played that clip before the bonus content. He seems like he's feeling happy, but many of his supporters are not happy. Many people are out there asking questions like, how could a shooter have gotten within that amount of yardage of the president of the United States with a rifle? How long was he there? And how long did the Secret Service know that he was there? Why was he flying a drone above the audience? Let's talk to a private investigator who talks about things like this. BX on X, one of our favorite guests. We haven't seen or heard from in a while. Let's bring her back. BX joining us live this morning from Texas. Good morning, BX.
Hey, Austin. How are you?
All right. Glad to have you back here, BX.
Yeah.
Talk to us your initial reactions about the attempted assassination of President Trump last week. What was your immediate reaction and your thoughts on that incident?
Well, man, yeah, that was a crazy day. I think that's probably the second craziest thing I've ever seen in my life happen live, because I was old enough to see 9/11 happen live. So that wasn't quite that crazy, but yeah, it was intense. I think that I was on my treadmill and I literally jumped off, ran down to my computer. I mean, it was crazy. It was shocking. Once I figured out what was happening, and I kind of figured it was a mass, realized it was a mass shooting, right? Yeah, it was. The question just started piling up. Are they going to bury all of the information about this guy? What are we going to actually learn was my question, right? Because I think that since I've done so much research into mass shootings and these kinds of events, one thing that I see pretty frequently is that we get very limited details afterwards. In this case, I was really hoping that we would get more information. I felt like the public would demand more information because of the circumstances, as opposed to, most mass shootings where people memory hole it within the first week or two. So far, we haven't seen much of anything about this guy. I guess they've been focusing a lot more on, how he got there in the first place, which, like you said, is just appalling. You imagine the Secret Service protection being like the highest order of protection in the country. How did this guy get into that perimeter and take those shots? Really crazy.
Now we're seeing stories that the Trump campaign apparently requested more Secret Service help, but was denied that from the White House.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday, and I saw. It's really hard to distinguish what's real and what's disinformation right now. And then you get people who are mad that you're talking about things that were officially reported, like, oh, you believe that, and it's like, what am I supposed to believe here? Because you've also got 4chan pushing out disinformation and memes and stuff that people are falling for, but that. one thing that I did hear was that they had like DHS had taken over it, I guess. Is that right? And so it was less Secret Service and more of like the B team almost.
Yeah, which is why conspiracy theories have been flying that the deep state actually wanted him dead. They stepped back. Videos have emerged of this woman who was in the crowd behind him, and people are questioning why she behaved the way that she behaved. Brandon Herrera, the AK gun guy, did a really good video. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, where he showed
Yeah.
the ballistics of the shot that was taken at President Trump, and then, of course, the ballistics of the counter shot. Because a lot of people thought that this event was staged, or they were claiming that this event was staged. And I can tell you that trying purposely to hit someone in the ear, while maybe you could hit someone who is, a 6'2" tall target on its own, trying to just hit someone's ear is damn near impossible if you're trying to do something like that on purpose, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm a pro shooter as well. So like, and I've shot a lot of rifle, long range rifle, and with the gun that he was using on the platform he was on, almost no shot that he would be able to come. Because we're talking a half an inch, right? So no, that's not. But the thing is that right when that happened, my mind was going through all this crazy stuff. Before like the adrenaline settled and I started thinking rationally. But I think a lot of people are still in that phase where they're just so stunned that they're grasping onto any kind of conspiracies they can. And I like to encourage people not to do that, because it's a really easy way for people to grab you and lead you by the nose, right? When they know people are in this emotionally sensitive place, it's easy for them to come in with some kind of narrative and just grab you and lead you to whatever place they want you to go. Try to resist that. Try to just focus on what we know, which isn't much, granted, but they have given us a few very interesting bits of information about this guy that I think is kind of being left by the wayside while people kind of fantasize over these more unlikely scenarios.
So talk to us then. What do we know about this Thomas Matthew Crooks guy?
Well, it's not unusual for us to see these kinds of shootings happen from people who have very confused ideologies, right? So in this case, we've gotten information that's all over the place. We hear that the guy, he donated $15 to Act Blue, which, by the way, if somebody on your Facebook page goes, instead of a birthday gift, please donate to this charity or something, right? And you go there and you click and you donate. You might not even know you're paying Act Blue until you get the credit card receipt. Because I've actually done it. So if anything ever happens to me and they say that I gave $50 to Act Blue, it was like Facebook birthday, right? But then they also say he was a registered Republican. They say that he didn't have any online footprint, which is true. He did have some very, very scarce online footprint, but it didn't tell us much. We do know that he was communicating on encrypted apps, which is significant for me because as a researcher in, fringe extremism communities, they're all using Telegram. I would bet a lot of money that one of those encrypted apps that he was on was Telegram. And there's a lot of really bad influences there. A lot of people who might want to try to get somebody, a patsy, which I would call it a patsy, right? Somebody to do something really extreme by proxy. And that's what we've seen with a lot of mass shooters lately, is that they are groomed into doing this kind of thing. They're groomed into an ideology. They're, instructed on how to commit an attack in such a way that it will benefit the person who's doing the grooming. And so those people behind the scenes, we very, very rarely get a glimpse of who they are. And I think that this used to be like a wild conspiracy theory like a couple of years ago, but people are really warming up to this reality that there are people indoctrinating these young men into going and committing these attacks. In fact, one of those people was actually arrested, and the DOJ announced the indictment just a couple of days ago. And it was a Ukrainian neo-Nazi member of something called the Maniac Murder Cult, which is just this fringe terror group that no one's ever heard of, except for me, of course, because what is my life? I don't even know anymore, right? But we've tracked these guys on Telegram grooming kids to commit shootings. They're accelerationists, meaning not the acceleration, but they're accelerationists, meaning that they want a collapse of the West. They want to try to do things to create chaos and spur division, to put our country in turmoil so that they can eventually hope to collapse the entire country. And what better way to do that than by targeting Trump? So we are seeing the FBI start to go after and arrest these big bad sharks in the fish tank who are grooming people to do things like this. And so I don't think it's far-fetched at all that there was somebody else, maybe not another shooter, but somebody else behind the scenes who was giving him instructions and putting these ideas in his head to go do this.
What do you think when you see the news that he was spotted an hour before the event? He was contacted. He had a contact with the police. They knew that he was there. He was walking around with a rangefinder. He was doing surveillance of the event with a drone before the event happened. He also had remote detonation devices, which, I mean, as good with as weapons as I personally am, I think I would have to Google for something like that to figure out how to do it. Yet we don't find any search history of something like that. What do you think about the level of sophistication that this shooter at 20 years old had in how he managed to pull this event off? Does that make you smell a rat?
Well, I don't know. This is all, I don't know any more than you do, right? But my first like kind of thoughts about that is, one, what a tremendous failure by the Secret Service and all of these, security companies and the police and everybody who was there to provide security, that they allowed this kid to just like walk on by with rangefinders and climb up on the roof. And it was 3 minutes before they actually took action. Yeah, that's crazy. So number one, that to me says less about him being advanced, because if it seems like if he were really advanced, he would have not done those things, right? He would have like tried to hide it a little bit better. I think number one, we're looking at a huge failure in security. But when you talk about the online footprint, and I've said this before, it's not unusual at all for us to see young people like 20 or younger. They don't have traditional social medias anymore. They're not on Instagram and Facebook. They're using encrypted apps like Telegram. To some extent Discord, which is less encrypted, but they also use these private servers where it's harder to find their footprint. And it doesn't take very much technological savviness to figure out how to remain anonymous online these days. So yeah, I realized that he was also searching for, again, confused things, right? He was searching for DNC dates. He was searching for pictures of Biden, pictures of Trump, places he could see all of these people. So it honestly looked like he was trying to figure out where he could get the biggest stir. And that's what kind of made me think more towards an accelerationist motive. Because honestly, if Trump had died, our country, I don't think we could recover. That would have been the most ultimate act of sowing chaos that you could imagine. So, I think that it is possible. It's still possible that he was just a deranged leftist who hated Trump. But usually in those cases, we're seeing signs of that, So I think in this case, given the level of secrecy, he was probably, in my opinion, being instructed by somebody online and kind of coached into this kind of anonymous encrypted apps to possibly do something that would really just create a huge piece of chaos for our country. And I would say also, I know a lot of people are like, saying things like, oh, well, he was on Steam, or he was on this and that. A lot of that ended up being disinformation, y'all. And I hate to say this, but like, if it didn't come out officially, yeah, I get it. We don't trust the FBI. Like, I get that. But if it didn't come from there, a lot of that stuff was disinfo. One thing that I want to tell people is that every mass shooter that we have, every single one, immediately, as soon as we learn their name, people start making fake accounts. And that's why a lot of places like Instagram and even Steam have come up with tools that will show you how often or like when the person changed their username. So you can see, oh, on July 13th, they changed their username to Thomas Matthew Crooks. And they're trying to get you to click on it so that they can get traffic. So there's a lot of fake stuff out there. Try to stick with what we know and go from there, because otherwise you're going to get led by the nose down crazy rabbit holes you don't belong in.
I'm speaking to BX on X this morning. She's a private investigator and a firearms expert about the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, the attempted assassin of Donald Trump at a rally in Pennsylvania last week. Please click the like button. And of course, if you enjoy this kind of content, follow us as well. We'd love to have you be a regular guest on the show. BX, what do you make of the psychological profile to the extent that both of his parents were mental health counselors? One was a registered libertarian, the other a registered Democrat. But both mental health counselors, you would think that if their son was in some sort of mental distress, that certified professionals in mental health would be able to recognize and help their son get the kind of assistance that he would need if he was struggling.
And this is where I have a hard time holding off on my conspiracy brain stuff, because it's almost always there's some kind of weird thing with the parents. You see it all the time. Oh, the parents were psychologists. The parents worked for Lockheed Martin. I don't know. It's always something with the parents that get us all stewed up. Yeah, I don't have an explanation.
He was in a BlackRock video commercial, you know?
Now that I think might have been more incidental, because he was just like in the background, right? Like all those other kids were on there too, right? I think that we want to make everything a conspiracy, and there are actual conspiracies, like lots of them that are, the thing is that the stuff that you guys are seeing, or the stuff that most people are seeing, are very surface level stuff. And the true conspiracy is like way, way, way deeper. And what you'll find if you really, and anyone can do this, anyone can just dig into these things and go way too deep. I wouldn't recommend going as deep as I have, because I've received threats to my life for exposing some of these people and some of these shadowy influences. But I think that there's a tendency for us to really want to focus on these like really superficial aspects of the whole thing, and they're almost always distractions. They're almost always distracting us from going deeper into another area. But it is really weird. You would think that you would definitely think that they would have a more well emotionally adjusted kid.
I wouldn't, honestly, from what I know about the mental health community. My wife is a certified therapist, and she does work with this. I hear the trainings. She has continuing education credits that she's required to get in order to continue her therapy, in order to remain a government certified social worker and to work as a remote telehealth therapist. She has to take these classes. And when I hear the classes on her laptop from the other room, they are the worst of every leftist trope you can imagine.
Oh man.
Hate white people, hate Donald Trump, hate men.
What?
Oh yeah, it is the most the bottom of the barrel in terms of slimeball leftist politics. And in order for her to maintain her certification to be a therapist, she's basically has to commit herself to every diversity, equity, and inclusion standard that the government has, right? And commit herself to agreeing with them and to pass these tests in order to maintain her certification. So I actually think that the mental health field perpetuates more often than cures the problems that people go out and seek the therapy that they're there for, because I think many of these counselors, BX, are mentally ill themselves and are using their clients for therapy themselves in order to feel good about themselves, which I feel
I really thought about it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's deeply problematic when you take mentally ill people and you put them into this profession, and it's something like 90 to 95% females, highly neurotic, mentally ill, hardcore leftist Democrats, right? Hardcore DEI standard advancing leftist female Democrats. And in order for you to get the government certification to be a mental health therapist, you have to pass their tests. So I actually think that the fact that he had parents who were in the mental health community, I actually think that probably might have been part of the problem, right? They were probably trying some of these new parenting, peaceful parenting techniques and things like that. And not a lot of people too are talking about BX. His dad was a libertarian.
Yeah, I did see some people talking about that.
Not a lot of people are really getting into the details of that. I mean, mom's a Democrat, makes sense, obviously, but dad wasn't a Democrat too. Dad wasn't a Republican. Dad was a libertarian. Now, how come nobody's talking about this?
I mean, I think that the parents' details are, Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. I really thought about it like that, but I have noticed that a lot of these mass shooters have parents who are in the mental health field. That's one of those things that gets your conspiracy brain really working overtime, because you're like, well, maybe they were programming their kid or something, right? As far as the libertarian thing, I'm not sure, but it again just doesn't fit to me. This is my opinion, doesn't fit the profile of a deranged leftist who was out to murder Trump because he, thought that he was a fascist dictator like Hitler and was going to put everyone into concentration camps. Like, I'm not seeing that coming from this situation, right? One thing about the libertarian kind of, I guess, landscape is that I've seen a lot of fringe terrorist groups latching on to this more, I would say, libertarian right area, with almost like an ANCAP kind of thing, but it kind of bleeds into the libertarian spaces online. And I've seen them infiltrating these places and trying to kind of seed violent rhetoric in there. And when they do that, they're doing kind of like a cybernetic pushing, right? Where they're trying to push people's buttons and see who reacts. Oh, this guy's really responding a lot to the things I say on Telegram. This is, and then they do like a psychological profile on this person, and they decide this is the guy who we want to be our patsy. This is the guy who we want to go commit a terror attack for us. And I think that people underestimate the extent to which people in the middle can be influenced in that way, right? Because if you've got somebody who's already really ingrained into the left, really ingrained to the right, those people are sometimes harder to nudge because they're already kind of set in their position. But if you have somebody who's kind of in the middle, maybe kind of leans towards anti-government, maybe that's something worth exploring. Like, how vulnerable are those types of people to, radical indoctrination and nudging, so to speak?
Do you think that we'll ever really have a full profile on what happened at this event and who this kid was and why this happened? Or do you think they're going to memory hole this?
They'll memory hole it. Well, I don't think that this one will be as easy to memory hole. Obviously, it was such a shocking incident. What I see will happen is that people will continue to perpetuate conspiracies in perpetuity, like they do with 9/11, and we'll never actually know. We'll never know the facts, right? Or we'll never know the truth of it, because the thing is, we don't trust the FBI to give us this information. We don't trust the Secret Service. So it's almost like I think in that makes us all a little bit angry. And I can see that, right? I can see that everybody gets a little bit angry when you say, well, the FBI said this and that. Whoa, you're going to trust the FBI? Well, I'm going to trust, I'm not going to trust 4chan. So who am I trusting here, right? So so when you start attacking the sources, how do you even talk about this situation, right? So yeah, I think that the biggest thing that we need to push for is FOIA. We need to get Freedom of Information Act requests on this situation, and we need to push and sue the government until they give us all of the information. In my opinion, it should be unredacted. But again, I've softened up because I've seen the FBI arresting these guys lately, the people who are grooming mass shooters. And I have an entry on my Substack I just released last night. You can go read all about the guy they just arrested who was doing just that. So, I'm hopeful that they're starting to come around and look into these influences, because what we usually see is mass shooter. He did it because of this. Plea deal, done, memory hole, right? And, I think that it's really important that we look deeper, like, into who influenced these people. Was it like more of just like this guy was kind of crazy and he indoctrinated himself online? Or was there somebody behind the scenes who was giving him those nudges? And that's the kind of stuff that we really need to push for transparency on, so we can get to the bottom of it.
Speaking of those nudges, that people nudging him and the potential for there to be a conspiracy, because there doesn't have to be the deep state or BlackRock or Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton being involved in this for it to be a conspiracy. All it would take is just one other person helping him to do this for it to meet the technical definition of a conspiracy. So, I mean, all of my background in firearms is on military surplus firearms. So, the old World War II guns, World War I stuff. I'm not as up to date on the modern firearms as perhaps maybe even you are, BX. But when it comes to explosives, the extent of my knowledge is tannerite, inside of a pumpkin, and then maybe taking some sparklers, wrapping some duct tape around them, throwing them in a microwave, and setting it on fire. So, I mean, not that I've done that, if the feds are listening, which I'm sure they are, and I would never tell anyone to do that. But do you think, BX, that you could, without a Google search, build an explosive device with a remote detonator? Could you do that just on your own without any help?
I mean, I could do it without a Google search. Yeah. I mean, because like, again, in these Telegram groups that we've been in, they're out there sharing these manuals and sharing step-by-step instructions on how to build bombs and stuff in Telegram. Or you have somebody in a Telegram private message, and those people are giving you step-by-step instructions on how to build a bomb. That even strengthens my theory that somebody else was behind the scenes, kind of giving him instructions, because there's a lot of people who are like, well, when I was a kid, I had the anarchist cookbook from the library. Okay, but this is 2024. Kids don't go to libraries, and they don't have the anarchist cookbook. They're getting it online somewhere online. They found this information.
They're not building British Sten guns in their garage.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, maybe some kids are, but I don't think that was this kid,
cool
right?
kids,
Yeah. But, one thing about Telegram, which I think is worth pointing out, because they're talking about these encrypted apps. A lot of encrypted apps, the feds can get information from. Telegram will not cooperate with the feds, even in situations where most of us would agree that they should, like these big pedophile networks that I've been exposing for so long, right? Telegram will not comply with the U.S. government's request for anything. And it's really challenging for them to get access to somebody's DMs or channel history. They're not getting it. Telegram is a black hole. And I think they're stationed in the UAE, and they just do not comply with the government requests. And so if he were talking to somebody on Telegram who was giving him step-by-step instructions, unfortunately, we'll never know that unless somebody else comes forward or something. There's another way to get that information.
We're speaking to BX on X about the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, in the event that occurred last week. If you're enjoying the content, please click like, and of course, follow as well if it's your first time watching the show. BX, have we covered everything here to the extent of your knowledge? Is there anything else that you think we might have missed on this story, or perhaps what we should look out for in the upcoming Secret Service hearings? Anything that you'd like to share?
I don't know. I don't know what we're going to hear. I imagine that the Secret Service hearings are going to focus more on logistics and how their protocols failed. And we'll probably stray away from talking about the shooter and his ideology, potentially conspiracy involved in terms of who was, poking him behind the scenes. I think that all of that will kind of get glossed over, and we'll start hearing a lot more about the Secret Service failures. I will not stop looking into it. I would still like to know who this kid was talking to, what platforms he was using to talk to them on, and what his ideology might have been. But the truth is, we just might never know. I mean, I really do, again, think that this is a good candidate for us to start questioning whether there could have been an accelerationist motive. Meaning, and I know this makes people mad because they really want to believe that it's like a deranged leftist, right? But again, we're just not. Usually when it's that case, we could see it. And in this case, we're just not seeing that, and which makes me wonder if, rather than somebody who just really hated Trump, this was somebody who really hated the country and wanted to see our country fall into chaos, as opposed to just an assassination on a figure he didn't like. I really think that that's an angle worth exploring. Whether or not we ever figure out what's really going on, those people do exist, and they're a serious domestic terror threat. And so this one kind of fits all the criteria for something that we would look for and say, it might have been accelerationist in this case.
You can see her screen name for X below her lovely visage there on the screen, at BX_on_X. So if you want to find her over there, please do so. Is there anything else you'd like to plug or let people know where they can follow you, BX, other than your X?
I also have a Substack. It's BX Writes. And I'm putting out a lot of really, really good stuff there. I've been starting to publish all of my investigations there. I basically got a book growing. So if you're interested in the rising accelerationist threat, or if you're more interested in satanic pedophile networks, I've got a lot of that too. So a lot of the stuff that we call conspiracies nowadays, we're starting to realize it's real, and it's been real for a long time. And so I've got a lot of independent research that's exclusive up on my Substack as well, BX Rights.
It wasn't enough for them to be pedophiles. They had to be satanic too. Let's give it up for at BX on X. Hey, thanks for being so generous with your time, BX. We appreciate you joining us here live on the show. Come back soon.
I will. Thanks, Austin.
Thanks very much. We appreciate
Bye.
you. Let's give her a round of applause.
There's a myth that President Biden's running for president. I think they just put a brain-dead, hollowed-out husk of a human being in the White House because that's more convenient for them. The risk is a thinking person could change their mind. They don't want somebody who could change their mind. They want Joe Biden.
Mark my words, Joe Biden will not be the nominee for the Democratic Party.
We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class. Step up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate. Biden should step aside so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
All right,
just tell us the truth so we can have an honest debate.
The president is healthy and vigorous, fit enough to perform his presidential duties.
Fit for duty.
Fit for duty. Fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency.
Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
There's a myth that President Biden's running for president.
Vivek Ramaswamy calling it before it happened. It was a conspiracy theory until it became the conspiracy. Well done to Vivek Ramaswamy, who called it out. I have to say a big shout out and a thank you to our sponsor for the Wake Up America show, Preserve Gold. They sell gold and silver to help you to protect your financial security. I endorse Preserve Gold as the sponsor for the Wake Up America show to help me, to help you to secure your financial future for your family. We love Preserve Gold. We have a bag of gold and silver at our house in order to protect ourselves from any winds of ill fortune that might come. If you've never invested in gold or silver, we're going to offer you today a free gold and silver information packet that you can get from our friends at Preserve Gold. You can text the word Liberty to 50505. That's Liberty to 50505. They're not going to spam you. They're not going to call you at all times of the day, including dinner time. They're just going to send you a free gold and silver information packet. They'll follow up with you once. And then if you're interested, great. Buy it, support the show, support your own financial future. Everybody wins. If not, then they'll leave you alone. It's no big deal. So text the word Liberty to 50505. Preserve Gold is helping the Wake Up America show no longer just be wakeupAmericaShow.com. We are now, thanks to Preserve Gold, the 4 Liberty Network. So let's say thank you to Preserve Gold. You can either click the link below that's in the show notes for the Rumble stream, or you can text the word Liberty to 50505. Again, text the word Liberty to 50505. Find out more about how to invest in gold and silver. We'll be very grateful to you if you do. Yes. Let's give it up for Preserve Gold. Yes. In somewhat related news, Redditors are getting sterilized because Biden dropped out. What? Austin, where are you going with this? What? You think I'm joking? I'm not joking. Reddit, the wretched hive of scum and villainy that it is, shows people who are Redditors are loudly and proudly announcing that due to Joe Biden dropping out, they are sterilizing themselves.
No, God!
Wait.
No,
No,
God,
don't be upset about that. You should actually be happy. No, please. They're voluntarily taking themselves out of the gene pool. Biden is to stand down in re-election. One Redditor, Dark Dragoon, says, "We're effed. I need to go get my uterus removed while I still have some bodily autonomy left. I refuse to live in the effing Handmaid's Tale." Good for you, ma'am. Don't you love the Wake Up America show? Where else are you going to see this stuff? Sword Butts says, "I need to do the same. Remove her uterus. I was already planning on it, but now my timeline is going to be much different." Good for you, Sword Butts. Remove thine uterus. Quite Well Read says that I had mine removed last month, just in the nick of time, apparently. Good for you. I strongly support this movement, says Barney Styles, as do I. In full solidarity with Joe Biden stepping down, I recommend all leftist females and males remove their uteruses. Jawanessa says, I got my hysterectomy in December. Do it. Recovery was much easier than I thought it would be. Check out r/hysterectomy. Good for you. We support you. 100%. Get those tubes tied and those rectomies hystericized. Conspiracy theories swirling around Joe Biden stepping down, obviously, but none more so due to this strange note that was issued by Joe Biden's brother. Reminder, we have not seen or heard from Joe Biden since he announced that he was stepping down yesterday. And then that was only on a piece of paper that he apparently signed that was posted on the platform X. But in this note from Joe Biden's brother, we are asking ourselves, is Joe Biden even alive right now?
Younger brothers, and here's what he told us. He said, I'm incredibly proud of my brother. Selfishly, I will have him back to enjoy whatever time we have left. He is a genuine hero. Country over self. It sounds corny in our cynical political environment, but he nor I are cynical. The goal remains the same: defeat Trump and continue the work that Joe has done. My hope is that our party rallies around this heroic act. We asked him whether he feels that his brother's overall health and vitality played a major role in this decision, and he says, in my humble opinion, absolutely. So a member of the president's family now confirming that the president's health was indeed a major factor in this decision and calling his brother a hero.
I wonder if Joe Biden even knows that he stepped down.
For making the decision to pass the torch to Kamala Harris.
So, Nancy, sorry, can you clarify that the family is saying his health was or was not a factor?
He's saying that in his humble opinion, yes, the president's health and vitality played a considerable role in his decision. It's important to note Frank Biden is not speaking for the family writ large. This was simply a conversation between CBS News and Frank Biden. Unclear how much input he had in this decision, but he says that he believes that his brother's health did play a role, and he says that the goal remains the same: to defeat Donald Trump.
Well, that is notable because to date, the family, the White House, the establishment has rejected the premise that there was anything that was challenging the president's mental acuity or his health, and that all these accusations were baseless, that it was just age and a few, difficult nights like he had on the debate stage. So that is a change in message.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Okay, I can first.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
Remember Venn diagrams, those three circles? Right. And then let's just see where they overlap. You will not be surprised because I have constructed a Venn diagram on this. Remember those three circles, how they overlap? I love Venn diagrams, so I just do. Whenever you're dealing with conflict, pull out a Venn diagram, right? And so, the three circles. And so I asked my team, right? They're fantastic. I'm geeking out right now. He sees the Venn diagram of it all. He sees that there are those circles.
Commander-in-Chief, more like cringe Commander-in-Chief.
I can first.
And maybe people seem that they're a little different. They live in different parts of the country. They may be different age or different race. But
this could be what we deal with for the next 4 years.
That area in the middle, that overlap. I asked my team to do a Venn diagram of where these attacks are happening. So voting rights, women's reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights. And, of course, there was a huge intersection. I asked my team to do a Venn diagram for me of where we are seeing attacks and who are the attacks against and the similarity. And when you look at a diagram of just a Venn diagram in that regard, it tells a real tale.
Okay, well, what is that real tale?
Okay,
Sadly, we have to say goodbye to our Joe Biden soundboard. We did
America
enjoy.
is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Hopefully, the next 4 years sounds something more like this.
From now on,
it's going to be America first, okay?
Yes.
America first.
That's right. America first. Democrats have not stopped the conspiracy spin wheel as of this last week. Joy Reid from MSNBC has her own theory on what happened at President Trump's attempted assassination last week.
We still don't know for sure whether Donald Trump was hit by a bullet, whether he was hit by glass fragments, whether he was hit by shrapnel. We don't have those details. We actually have no details from his physician, even though this man is still a Secret Service protected, and presidential candidate. We know almost nothing. Why? Why don't we know that much? We know that 3 people were shot. 1 person, unfortunately, was killed at the rally. We don't know where they were sitting or standing relative to him.
Now, I love this quote from my buddy Jack Hunter. Says, notice how Democrats don't seem concerned about misinformation anymore. Thank you, Jack. Yes, exactly. And let's not forget, too, that Alex Jones got sued for $1 billion for spreading the idea that the Sandy Hook shooting was a hoax.
We don't know why, for 9 full seconds, Donald Trump was allowed to stand back up during an active shooter situation, even though they, at that point, had said the shooter was down. How would they have known if there were more shooters or not? Nobody knew that there could have been 5 shooters for all they knew. Yet they allowed him to stand up in the middle of that, crisis and pose for a photo.
They're so jealous and so upset at the value of that photograph for Donald Trump's reelection campaign. They hate that photo. Last week on the show, if you missed it, I talked about all of these journalists that are talking about how they have to stop circulating that photo because of the propaganda value it has for the Trump campaign.
And fist pumped the air so he could get the iconic photo. And then they allowed him to stand
Mongoose 87, great minds, great minds.
Again outside of the SUV instead of just shoving him into the SUV. That seems really unusual. What is the actual injury to Donald Trump's ear that's under that bandage?
Big brain with MSNBC, Joy Reid.
Shouldn't we know that by now? It's weird. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of curiosity about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's the Kamala cackle?
Okay, I can first.
I see our friend Mighty Megatron says he can't wait to get that manga tea. Yes, manga. Wait a minute, what's this? Cackling Kamala stickers? Cackle. Steffi made that one yesterday. Give her a round of applause. Very creative. Yes, manga. Donald Trump lives. Japanese manga tea. No other store in the world has the iconic picture of Donald Trump in a manga, Japanese manga style, with the Japanese characters on the side that say, Donald Trump wa itikeru. That's right. Donald Trump is alive. Donald Trump lives. That's right. You can get your Donald Trump Lives Japanese manga tea exclusively at the 4 Liberty shop. That's the number 4, 4libertyshop.com, right there on the front page. Donald Trump lives. Donald Trump wa itikeiru. How's my Japanese? Not bad, right? Arigatou gozaimashita. Hai. Ohayou gozaimasu. Hai. Arigatou. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes. Hai. Donald Trump wa itikeiru, exclusively available at 4libertyshop.com. Get yourself some sick merch over at 4libertyshop.com. We've also got a whole collection of Courage Under Fire tees and hoodies and mugs. You can get these exclusively at 4libertyshop.com. The blackout cover tee is one of our top products you can get at the 4 Liberty shop. Many people don't know, though, that I did put that Donald Trump wa itikeiru manga design on a phone case as well. So whether you got Android or iPhone, you can get a sick, nasty phone case right there for the Donald Trump Lives. Note the cherry blossom background that I made for that. Donald Trump Itikeru, available at forlibertyshop.com in the Trump Lives collection. We've got travel mugs and my personal favorite made by our buddy over at forlibertyshop.com. He shall remain nameless until such a time which he decides to reveal himself. The MAGA bullet hole hat, which is... Hi. Motte te kudasai. Hi. Yes, you're very welcome. So check those out at forlibertyshop.com. You're not going to find those anywhere else but on the For Liberty Shop at forlibertyshop.com. Oh, what is that noise? Are we leaving a little bit early? No, we're not leaving a little bit early. It's just that the bonus content that you all unlocked, not everybody has seen it yet, but it is a little bit longer than our normal bonus content. The 1968 Democratic Presidential Convention, which was in Chicago, was hotly contested, ending, of course, in the nomination of Hubert Humphrey. But it has many analogs to the Democratic Convention happening in Chicago next month. It may be the most hotly contested presidential convention that we have seen since 1968. So I produced a mini documentary for you all to enjoy, and instead of being a 5-minute little snippet of history, it's a 12-minute tour de force of the background of that contested political convention. All of this week on the Wake Up America show, I will be producing mini documentaries for all of you to enjoy some of the most contested political conventions in U.S. history so that you can be more informed and educated when the Democratic convention comes up. You're going to know about the 1860 Republican presidential convention and, of course, many other. I don't want to give all of the fun stuff away, but I think everybody knows the 1860, the Civil War, a little contested, a little contentious. But we're going to go through all of those throughout history this week. So thank you for unlocking today's bonus content. I'm going to play that mini documentary for you now as we head out the door. Don't forget, exit through the Grift Shop, forlibertyshop.com. Also, a couple of announcements if you haven't heard yet. We are now the For Liberty Network. That's right. No more Wake Up America show loners. We now have 2 new shows that we are incubating and will be dropping very soon. Also, just so you know, Baby Hazel comes any day now, sometime between now and the 1st. But if Hazel doesn't come by August 1st, I will be out on August 1st and 2nd, and more than likely taking the whole next week off to spend some time helping my wife rehabilitate. So keep an eye out for what's going to happen on my X account. If you see me posting in the next few days, in the afternoon or in the evening about Baby Hazel's coming or Baby Hazel's here or what have you, that's your sign that no show for like the next week. And I'll try and keep you updated as much as I can, but you need to follow me on X at AP4Liberty so that you can find out what's going to happen here, because we don't have that same kind of posting capability on Rumble. So make sure you follow me there. Exit through the Grift Shop, the For Liberty Shop on the For Liberty Network. Enjoy the bonus content. God, there's so much wonderful goodness happening on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. We'll see you tomorrow. Maybe. The baby isn't here. Bye, guys.
Wake Up America show looks at American political conventions that were hotly contested, violent, or historic. Considering the news of the ending of Joe Biden's presidential campaign, let's look at the 1968 Democratic Convention. The 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, Illinois, was marked by violent protests and party upheaval as Hubert Humphrey clinched the presidential nomination. Though the 1968 protests at the Democratic National Convention were largely against the Vietnam War, the country was undergoing unrest on many fronts. The months leading up to the infamous 1968 Democratic Convention were turbulent. The brutal assassination of Martin Luther King, Jr. in April had left the country reeling. And although segregation had officially ended, racism and poverty continued to make life difficult for many blacks. The Vietnam War was in its 13th year, and the recent Tet Offensive had proved the conflict was far from over, as the draft sent more young men into the fray. It was only a matter of time before a showdown would take place between the government of President Lyndon B. Johnson and America's war-weary citizens. By the time delegates arrived for the convention in Chicago, protests had been set in motion by members of the Youth International Party, Yippies, and the National Mobilization Committee to End the War in Vietnam, MOB, whose organizers included Rennie Davis and Tom Hayden. But Chicago's Mayor Richard Daley had no intention of letting his city or the convention be overrun by protesters. The stage was set for an explosive face-off. A divided Democratic Party. The Democratic Party in 1968 was in crisis. President Johnson, despite being elected with a huge majority in 1964, was soon loathed by many of his peers and constituents due to his pro-Vietnam War policies. In November 1967, a relatively unknown and unremarkable Minnesota senator named Eugene McCarthy announced his intent to challenge Johnson for the Democratic presidential nomination. In March 1968, McCarthy won 40% of the vote in the New Hampshire presidential primary, thereby validating his candidacy. A few days later, Senator Robert F. Kennedy abandoned his support for Johnson and entered the presidential fight. President Johnson saw the writing on the wall, and on March 31st, told a stunned nation during a televised address that he would not seek re-election. The following month, Vice President Hubert Humphrey, backed by Johnson, announced his candidacy for the nomination, further dividing the Democratic Party. Humphrey focused on winning delegates in non-primary states, while Kennedy and McCarthy campaigned hard in primary states. Tragically, the race was turned upside down again when Robert Kennedy was assassinated after giving his victory speech following the California primary on June 4th. Kennedy's delegates were divided between McCarthy and dark horse candidate Senator George McGovern, leaving Humphrey with more than enough votes to clinch the Democratic presidential nomination, but also leaving the Democratic Party in turmoil just weeks before their national convention. Pegasus, fed up with Democratic leadership's penchant for war, Yippies protesting at the 1968 Democratic National Convention conceived their own solution: nominate a pig for president. Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman came up with the idea, named their candidate Pegasus the Immortal, and pledged, "They nominate a president and he eats the people. We nominate a president and the people eat him." Pegasus the Immortal's presidential campaign may have been the shortest in recorded history. His chance to become leader of the free world ended abruptly when he, Rubin, and other members of his campaign staff were arrested at his first press conference in front of the Chicago Convention Center. Pegasus's eventual fate remains unknown to this day. Protesters take over Lincoln Park. In July 1968, Mob and Yippie activists applied for permits to camp at Lincoln Park and hold rallies at the International Amphitheater, Soldier Field, and Grant Park. Hoping to dilute the protesters' momentum, Mayor Daley approved only one permit to protest at the bandshell at Grant Park. About a week before the convention, despite not having permission, thousands of protesters, many of them from out of state and from middle-class families, set up camp at Lincoln Park, about 10 miles from the amphitheater. Expecting resistance, protest leaders organized self-defense training sessions, including karate and snake dancing. In the meantime, Democratic Party delegates began arriving in a Chicago that was rapidly approaching a state of siege. National Guardsmen and policemen met their planes. Their hotels were under heavy guard, and the convention amphitheater was a virtual fortress. Violence at Lincoln Park. Initially, Mayor Daley let the protesters remain in Lincoln Park. The day before the convention began, however, he ordered Chicago police to enforce the city's 11 p.m. park curfew, hoping that a show of force would clear out the protesters before the convention began. The mood at Lincoln Park was festive at first. There were impromptu yoga sessions, music, dancing, and the general revelry that happens when like-minded people gather together to protest the establishment. But the mood turned tense as opening day of the convention approached and the police presence increased. Around 11 p.m. on Sunday, August 25th, a couple thousand police officers wearing riot gear, helmets, and gas masks lined up at Lincoln Park. Some threw tear gas into the crowd. Protesters scattered every which way and rushed out of the park, blindly falling over each other as the tear gas assaulted their eyes. The protest grew violent when the police attacked them with clubs and often didn't stop when someone was subdued on the ground. Eyewitnesses report it was a scene of unrestrained bloodshed and chaos. Later, the police defended their actions by claiming the protesters shouldn't have broken curfew or resisted arrest. According to Thomas Foran, the Chicago lawyer who would later prosecute protest leaders, many of the protesters were spoiled brats who thought that they knew better than everybody. They were being encouraged to do things they shouldn't do by these sophisticated guys whose idea was to shame the U.S. government. Infighting on the convention floor. On Monday, August 26th, the 1968 Democratic National Convention officially opened at the International Amphitheater. Television cameras captured everything happening on the convention floor, but were unable to live broadcast the demonstrations happening outside. Whether the news blackout was due to the electrical workers' strike, as Mayor Daley claimed, or a deliberate attempt to prevent the public from learning about the citywide protests is unclear. Several states, including Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama, had multiple slates of delegates competing to be seated at the convention. Many took the battle to the convention floor. A racially diverse delegation from Texas was defeated. The convention soon became a battleground between anti-war supporters and Vice President Humphreys, and indirectly, President Johnson's supporters. On Tuesday night, when a promised televised primetime debate on Vietnam was postponed until after midnight when most viewers would be asleep, the anti-war delegates made their fury known to the point that Mayor Daley had the convention adjourned for the night. National Guard. Called up by Tuesday evening, protesters had gathered at the Conrad Hilton Hotel where many of the delegates and candidates, including Humphrey and McCarthy, stayed. As tense police officers tried to maintain control, Mayor Daley sent in the National Guard to help. Protest leader Tom Hayden united the crowd by proclaiming, "Tomorrow is the day that this operation has been pointing for some time. We're going to gather here. We are going to make our way to the amphitheater by any means necessary." On Wednesday, August 28th, the promised televised Vietnam debate finally took place to determine if the Democrats would adopt a plank of peace or one of continued war. At the same time, MOB convened their long-planned and highly anticipated anti-war rally at the bandshell at Grant Park. Up to 15,000 protesters gathered, much less than protest leaders had hoped for, and they were quickly surrounded by hundreds of police and National Guardsmen under orders to keep the protesters from reaching the amphitheater. Around 3:30 p.m. that afternoon, a teenage boy climbed a flagpole near the bandshell and lowered the American flag. The police moved in swiftly to arrest him as protesters rallied to his aid, assaulting the officers with rocks and food or whatever else they had on hand. Hoping to quell further violence, Davis reminded police that a legal protest permit had been obtained and requested that all police leave the park. In response, the officers moved in and beat Davis unconscious. The police beat protesters at will with clubs and fists. Despite the hostility, anti-violence protest leader David Dillinger still supported protesting peacefully. But all bets were off for Hayden, who feared mass arrests and worsening violence. He encouraged protesters to make for the streets in small groups and head back to the Hilton Hotel. Peace plank defeated. As things heated up in Grant Park, they also heated up on the convention floor. The peace plank was defeated, a huge blow to the peace delegates and millions of Americans who wanted the Vietnam War to end, and the delegates erupted into chaos. In the words of one delegate, "We were desolate. All of the work that we had done, all of the effort we had made had, it seemed to us, come to naught. Our hearts were broken." By nightfall, a standoff had ensued in front of the Hilton between thousands of angry protesters and thousands of police officers. No one knows who or what triggered the first blow, but soon police began clearing out the crowd, pummeling protesters and innocent bystanders with billy clubs and using so much tear gas that it reportedly reached Humphrey some 25 floors up as he watched the bedlam unfold from his hotel room window. At home in their living rooms, horrified Americans alternated between watching images of police brutally beating young, blood-splattered demonstrators and Humphrey's nomination. During the nomination process, some delegates spoke to the violence. One pro-McGovern delegate went so far as to refer to the police violence as Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago. Late that evening, Humphrey won the presidential nomination with Senator Edmund Muskie of Maine as his running mate, but the win was nothing to celebrate. Any illusion of unity within the Democratic Party was shattered. After Humphrey's nomination, many anti-war delegates joined protesters in solidarity and held a candlelight vigil. The next day, the remaining protesters and hundreds of anti-war delegates attempted to reach the amphitheater again, but were deterred with tear gas. At midnight on August 29th, the bloody and contentious 1968 Democratic Convention officially ended. Chicago 7. Over 650 protesters were arrested during the convention. The total number of injured protesters is unknown, but over 100 were treated at area hospitals. It was reported that 192 police officers were injured and 49 required medical treatment. Davis, Dillinger, Hayden, Black Panther activist Bobby Seale, and 4 other protest organizers, known as the Chicago 8, were charged with conspiracy and crossing state lines to incite a riot and brought to trial. After Seale complained about being denied his right to choose his own lawyer, The judge ordered him to appear before the jury each day bound, gagged, and chained to a chair. Seal was removed from the Chicago 8 case and ordered to stand trial separately, making the defendants into the Chicago 7. Seal was sentenced to 4 years for contempt of court, but the charges were later overturned. After a lengthy, often circus-like trial, the jury found the Chicago 7 not guilty of conspiracy. 5 defendants, however, were found guilty of inciting a riot. All convictions were eventually overturned on appeal. The pandemonium at the 1968 Democratic National Convention did little to stop the Vietnam War or win the 1968 presidential election. By the end of the year, Republican Richard M. Nixon was President-elect of the United States, and 16,592 American soldiers had been killed in Vietnam, the most of any year since the war began. The events of the convention forced the Democratic Party to take a hard look at how they did business and how they could regain the public's trust.
Don't forget to make sure you download the Rumble app. Once you download it, search for my channel, AP for Liberty, and follow my channel directly on the app. That will make sure that you get a notification every time that we go live. Click the link in the description or pinned live chat to download the Rumble app on your phone. It's free, but if you prefer to watch us on the big screen, it's also available for Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, Roku, LG, and Samsung TVs. All you need to do is search for Rumble. Thanks for watching the Wake Up America show at rumble.com/AP for Liberty.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting the rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I would go and I would fight this battle for us.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unveil your space with our custom metal.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy
crafted
is
with
much more
love and a bit of
libertarianism
libertarian magic.
well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Customize your own metal sign today.
Yet anytime you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights.
We lose freedom
where
here,
every
there's
note
no place
tells
to
a story.
escape to.
We
These are the
embrace
last
all
stand
singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit PetersonVoiceStudio.com and sign up for remote lessons tailored just for you. Let's begin this melodious journey together.
In a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative program is the one that
Tired of
says
spending your
less
hard-earned
about
money on
get
woke
off my
corporations
back.
that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP for Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your founding flavors at apforlibertyshop.com.
Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shots put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome